Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and you are either watching JobSearchTV.com or listening to this as No BS Job Search Advice Radio. I'd like to spend some time daily providing you with information about job search, hiring more effectively, managing and leading, a whole host of different things. And from time to time, I'll interview an expert about some element of job search or things that are going to help you be more effective professionally. Now, Margaret Page is my guest today, and we got to one another because I'd written an article for Forbes.com called The Invisible Professional. You can find it, do a Google search by my name, Jeff Altman, and Forbes.com. You'll find The Invisible Professional. And in it, I spoke about how individuals should practice more for public speaking, because certain things that you do help you in the workplace. So I got a message from Toastmasters who said, wow, thanks for the message. And I said, terrific. I would love to interview someone from Toastmasters. Voila, Margaret Page, who, by the way, is a coach, facilitator, speaker, licorice lover, Sudoku addict, and who motivates ambitious people and groups to find focus and clarity of purpose. Now, catch this one. I may have to translate some of her background. She served as an international officer on the board of Toastmasters International and is now first vice president of Toastmasters International. Margaret, welcome. How are you?
I am fine. Pleased to be here with you today, Jeff.
Thank you. And that accent of yours, I can tell that's not Brooklyn. Where in the world is Margaret today?
Delta, British Columbia, which is just outside Vancouver.
And folks in the United States, if you need me to translate, I'll do that at some point in the show, okay?
And it isn't Vancouver, Washington State. Vancouver, British Columbia.
Yay! So, Margaret, how long have you been involved with Toastmasters now, and what got you involved?
Great question, Jeff. I've been involved since 2003. And it took me a long time to walk through the doors, to have the courage to walk through the doors of Toastmasters. But in 2001, I was asked to speak at an association conference in Las Vegas, Nevada, about 1,700 people. And I couldn't even begin to fathom how I could possibly do that. I couldn't no more do that than sprout wings or grow horns. But what ended up happening is I let my team down. I owned a business and we were quite successful and asked to share success strategies. We did end up at that conference, and when I sat around with my managers and they looked at the speaker and then they looked at me wondering why we weren't up there sharing our story, I was embarrassed, and I felt I had let them down, and they had worked so hard for me. So it still took me several years before I found Toastmasters and I had the courage to walk through the doors. And I have to tell you, the first couple meetings, I said nothing. I sat in the back of the room. And finally on New Year's, just the first meeting of the year, similar to this time of year, I was determined to answer a table topic if I was asked. And the question happened to be, why is New Year's January 1st? I didn't know the answer to that at all, but it was a success story for me to get up and speak for 20 seconds.
So what is a table topic for which you wound up getting up and speaking?
Sure. Table topic is an opportunity for people to develop their critical thinking skills, to develop their ability to speak impromptu. And so questions are posed in a portion of the meeting, and people are invited to come up and give it a response to it. And the individuals that respond have to think on their feet, come up with an answer in a short time frame. They have generally about 2 minutes to answer the question.
2 minutes? Oh my God, it's going to be awful.
Awful. But it just goes to show you how you need to develop clarity of thinking in your own thinking, to be respectful of other people's time and your ideas.
And folks, I'll just simply say I was obviously hamming it up there. in the US, it's 1 to 2 minutes is what a typical table topic is, and the idea is to get as close to 2 minutes as possible. But if you think about what Margaret described, and I'm going to ask her to ask me some table topic questions so you can get a sense of how someone might respond. And I'll just simply say, it's an opportunity to practice as you might on a job interview, because you don't know what question's coming at you, and the same thing happens on table topics. And thus you have a chance to practice that think on your feet kind of thing. And if you do it often enough, you start getting rid of the nerves that might happen on an interview, because practice does help you become better, right?
Absolutely.
So throw a question at me about something, and let me see if I can make up some ridiculous answer for you.
Okay. So, Jeff, what was the greatest lesson you've learned in life?
So, Madam Table Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. By the way, in case folks you haven't noticed, I used to go to Toastmasters. The most important lesson I've learned in life is that a lifetime is not a long time. We like to think of ourselves as being immortal, but life has a way of showing us how ridiculous we are to act and believe from that space. So what I've learned to do over the course of time is really give my best at everything that I do, because I don't want to have regrets about an incomplete, unsuccessful life of service to others. So that lesson is part of what I carry with me every day in everything I do. Madam Table Topics Master. Now,
and that's where you get your dopamine hit.
You get the applause. Now, folks, different chapters do it in different ways. So some chapters, like the first one I went to in New York, and if you ever have the opportunity, SEC Rough Riders is that chapter in New York City where you would do it from your seat. So you just stand up and present from there. Where I am now in North Carolina, you walk to the front and you present from there. And it makes no difference. The idea is just to practice the extemporaneous speaking, so that for an interview it becomes second nature for you. So do you think I would win this week?
Well, I think you did a stellar job. Really, truly, yes.
Thank you. So Table Topics is one of the places where people can practice. Now, what other parts of the meeting are there? What is a typical meeting like? Like, are they at different times of day? Like, what goes on at these things?
Certainly. They are different times of the day. We have clubs in the morning, we have them at noontime, we have them in the evening, we have them 7 days a week. Different parts of the world have them at different times. And we even have online meetings now as well for those people that live in smaller communities and perhaps don't have the population to support a club. And essentially, there's three components. We have prepared speeches, which meet project objectives. So objectives are given, and the individual, the Toastmaster, has to meet those objectives in a certain time frame. And then we have the impromptu or the table topics that you mentioned. And we also have evaluations. Everything in Toastmasters is evaluated to help support individuals' growth. And I like to think of us helping in three ways. It's the individuals, so one-on-one communication, help you in meetings, and then help you on the stage. So in those three areas is where we really provide support to individuals.
So as someone comes in for the first time, I want to jump ahead, folks. I want to give you an idea of what's going to happen when you walk in the door, and then we're going to circle back to the meeting itself. So someone walks in the first time, and they're looking around whatever place this meeting is, and they're wondering, oh my God, there are people here, and they're going to be speaking, and they're going to want me to do that? Oh my God, like what? Tell me, what is it going to be like for the first time attendee?
Well, first, you're going to be greeted heartily with a handshake because we know how difficult it is for someone to work up the courage to walk through the door. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years, but you will be warmly greeted. We'll find a seat for you and ask a little bit about yourself and what your needs are, why you came in the door. And you'll be introduced in the meeting, at the beginning of the meeting, after the introduction and the theme is set. You'll be introduced to those that are in attendance, and at the end of the meeting, you'll be asked to share your thoughts. It might be one word if there's lots of guests, or you'll be asked to give a phrase or a statement about what your experience was like today. And of course, afterwards, there's someone going to talk to you about what you thought overall.
Great. So they'll have to speak.
No, you don't have to. Sorry, my apologies. You can always decline, but you will be invited at the end of the meeting to share your thoughts or perspectives of how you found the meeting. Now, some people, if it's a big move for them, they can just decline and say no. And you will have the opportunity at Table Topics. The Table Topics Master will ask if any of the guests here today would like to answer the questions. So there'll be an opportunity for those that are enthusiastic who come in the door determined to make a big move in the first meeting.
And most people don't, folks. And you can. That's the nice thing about it. You have the option to do what you like, including pass, which is perfect. And then you said something that I think I have to go to because they need to have this addressed. And they said, when you said there's the part of this with prepared speeches.
Yes.
Eventually they're going to do prepared speeches.
That's right. And not just eventually, they'll have the opportunity right away, should they choose. If you're on the fast track, you can immediately. Our program, we have a new digital program. It's called Pathways Learning Experience. And there's 11 different paths. So in our traditional program, everyone took the same routing. You did something called the Competent Communicator, and then you went on to 15 advanced manuals. Now we have 11 different paths and more on the way, but you do an assessment when you start the program and it makes some recommendations for you, or you can simply say, I'd like to take effective coaching or innovative planning or dynamic leadership or the humorous path, and you get to choose your path and you work along there. And in the path, it will set up a speech for you, give you an outline, share with you the purpose, and give you guidance on how you craft your speech. And so then it's up to you to craft your speech, and when you feel ready, you deliver that at the club meeting, and you are evaluated. You're told what worked well with the speech and some ideas or gifts for improvement.
Hold it. I got to slow you down here. So first I'm going to speak, and then someone's going to evaluate me?
Yes.
And gee, that sounds like it could be harsh.
It could be, but we've trained and taught people how to give evaluations. So we generally start off with what your strengths were, and then maybe one or two areas to tweak, because we know the program accommodates a professional speaker and someone coming in who's so nervous, their paper is shaking, their knees are wobbling, their hearts are thumping, and the program accommodates both those levels. So you were given an evaluation at your level, and conclude with some encouragement of next steps that you might want to take.
Cool. Now that first speech, what generally goes into that first presentation to the group?
Sure. The very first speech we call an icebreaker, and that's where you talk about yourself, which is generally the easiest to do. And so you share a little bit about yourself so members of the club know and understand who you are, or get some perspective on you. And it takes some of the pressure off with having to present new information or content-rich information. So And it's an interesting aspect. I think those that someone like yourself who does podcasting and blogging is or YouTubing is that you get to do these reflections all the time. And I think there's a real art of being or a great opportunity in life to be able to reflect back on your life and come to some resolve about things and share that with an audience. There's some real magic in that.
The first time I went up, I've been a member of Toastmasters twice. And the first time I went up was in New York. And I went through my nervous moment having memorized my speech. But I was going to tell a particular story from my life, which was adopting our son from Kazakhstan.
Oh.
So I got up, and there are people to help you with the timing, because the idea is your job is not to speak for 45 minutes on this subject. It's 4 to 6 minutes, right? I'm just making
That's
sure.
right. The icebreaker, 4 to 6 minutes.
And as a result, I did my presentation, and there's a person in the back signaling me to let me know where I was, and I was a little behind. So mentally, you start shaving points out, and you get to the end. And at my great reveal at the end of the speech was I had a poster made up of the first time I held my son.
Oh.
And that's exactly what the entire audience did. And the other speakers that day said, because some clubs have a competition for best speaker on a given day, and the other people who were presenting all went, "Why are we talking? He's got this one."
Yeah.
So
But you just bring up a great point. You see, this is why Toastmasters is so successful, is because people can share who they are, and we create that sense of community. What you just shared, happens morning, noon, and night all over the world, 7 days a week. That sharing, revealing of who we are. Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you. And how long is a typical meeting?
Oh, a typical meeting can go from an hour to 2 hours, 3 hours. I've even heard of one club in the world that goes 6 hours on a Saturday. They're trainers, and they deliver 45-minute presentations and notes. So the program is very flexible that way.
Gotcha. And folks, whichever meeting you go to, you'll have an idea of how long their meeting is. I just want to give you an idea of what's typical for them. Now, you also
certainly, sorry, Jeff. Certainly, 98% of the meetings are an hour to 2 hours, not beyond. So I would say 98%.
Now, I've been to lunch meetings. I've been to early evening meetings. Are there early morning meetings as well?
Yes, 6 a.m. meetings.
Oh.
And I was recently in Vietnam, and they have weekend meetings, Saturdays and Sundays, lots of weekend meetings.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. This is like BNI in some respects, that it's all over the world in cultures I don't know anything about. And it just amazes me how well the program translates.
Yes.
Into different cultures. So then there's the part where you're evaluated. I presume as you become more experienced, you become an evaluator too, right?
Absolutely. It's a great skill to have at life. You can use that at work, transferable skill there, and at home if you need to support your children or your spouse in some way. It's a great skill to be able to share an evaluation with someone, give them feedback on what can be improved on, and also acknowledge them for what they do well.
And I'm going to be humorous here when I say they don't get up to the podium or lectern and say, that was one of the worst speeches I ever heard.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Someone likened it similar to an Oreo cookie. You get the chocolate coating, and then you get the icing inside, and then you get the chocolate on top again. So, but we find a way. You and I are of the age where we recall the polio vaccine used to come on a sugar cube.
Yes. I was going to make a joke about being 24. So but
okay.
I precede that sugar cube.
Yeah.
in the vaccines. But yes, I do remember.
Yes. And when you hear evaluations of other people, we're growing and learning all the time. And that was the concept or the idea that our founder really created, is that opportunity to grow in a different model than an academic standing in front of the room teaching to you or speaking at you. Mhm.
Now, as we're recording this, it's 2020. And obviously, I'm mentioning this because whatever price uh, we're going to hear as an answer for joining may change in the future. So, depending upon where in the world someone is, could you give us a sense of what it costs to join the Toastmasters Club?
Certainly. So there's two elements to the fee that you might have to pay in a membership fee. One is to Toastmaster International, which is $45 for a 6-month period of time. And you may have to pay a fee to your club if they're renting meeting space in order to meet. And we have one-time fee to set you up in the computer system, which is $20. That's a one-time fee. It doesn't matter if you had a lapse in your membership for a number of years, you want to come back, that one-time fee covers you no matter, even if you're 24 years old and in years since you were there. But essentially $45 for 6 months. I don't think you can find greater value in the learning and growing field at all.
This is terrific. What else should someone know about the meetings, know about Toastmasters that you think would be helpful that I haven't asked about yet?
Well, we have a host of material on our website, toastmasters.org. If you're wanting to do some background information, and most people do, they do research before they buy now on the internet, not like it used to be years ago where you'd go in and explore something in a business. And you can link to any of the clubs that you might be interested in. We have a space on the website which find a club, where you can find any club in the world. You put your zip code in there or your address, and it'll find within so many radius those clubs, and you'll be able to contact those clubs about coming to visit them and explore. And we encourage you to test out different clubs, because there's different flavors of clubs. There's specialty clubs. There's clubs that might specialize in improv or humor or advanced speaking, or those extremely nervous or related to a church group or a corporate group. So there's all kinds of clubs all over the world, and I encourage individuals to explore and find one that meets your needs and is a good fit for you.
Earlier, I spoke about the first club I joined in New York, SEC Rough Riders. And the SEC stood for Sales Executives Club.
Oh.
And it used to meet in a hotel called the Roosevelt Hotel in the Rough Rider room of that hotel. So the name of the club represented where it originally met. It eventually moved somewhere else, but the name stuck with it. And the club I belonged to in Asheville, North Carolina for a number of years, it used one particular space, had a very different energy to it than the club in New York, because it wasn't geared towards sales professionals. So what Margaret's saying is absolutely true. Each club has a different perspective to it and a different feel and flavor based upon the people who come.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And by the way, just as an aside, folks, I found that if you do a Google search for Toastmasters, normally Google will return the clubs that are closest to you.
Oh, good. Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome. It may have changed, but I did this with someone I coached not long ago, and it became a nice way for them to find a club. So, folks, I just want to say before I have Margaret sign out that the goal of my bringing Margaret on related to helping you perform better on interviews in order to have the practice with extemporaneous speaking that shows up on an interview. And I'm a big believer in Toastmasters because it's cheap, right? You could hire a speaking coach, but this is really inexpensive by comparison to what a coach might charge you. So, Margaret, thanks so much for making time today. How else can people find out more about Toastmasters, you, whatever? Okay.
All right. Our website, of course, is www.toastmasters.org, and that will give you all the information you could possibly want about Toastmasters. And I encourage each person to come out and try us out. And if it's for interviewing specifically, let the club know you're here to practice your impromptu, and they will invite you to table topics, and you can ask each and every week to be a part of table topics, and they will accommodate that need.
And when I hear the title Toastmasters, this isn't about stepping up and doing a toast at the bar. This is really about speaking.
That's right. It's really about speaking.
Thank you, Margaret. And folks, I'll be back soon with more. If you're interested in my coaching you and helping you with your search, with managing and leading, with hiring more effectively, many of you have heard what I've said about the work that I do. Visit my website, thebiggamehunter.us. I've got a ton there that you can watch, listen to, or read that'll help you find work more quickly and help you in all these other areas. And if you're interested in speaking with me, on the site there's a button that says schedule. You can schedule time for coaching or a free discovery call. I'd love to connect with you. And I'll just lastly say, if you're watching on YouTube, click the small icon in the lower right or the picture of me in the upper left. You'll get notified whenever I release something new. Hope you have a great day and take care.